Happy Friday, everyone. On today's show, we discuss Calgary's signing of Nazem Kadri, their trade with Montreal to create the cap space with some complicated conditions, and a discouraging update on Carey Price. All that and more on today's Locked On NHL.
You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Friday edition of Locked On NHL. I am Rachel Donner from Locked On Flyers. I'm on Twitter at rmiriam. I'm here as always on Fridays with Gil Martin of Locked On Islanders. You can find him on Twitter at IceWarsNYR Gil, how you doing today?
I am good. It's Friday. It's got to be good. So how about you?
I'm doing pretty good as well. We are going to talk a little bit about your Islanders related to this Calgary deal coming up very soon. But thanks for making Locked On NHL your first listen every day. We are free and available on all podcasting platforms. Plus, you can watch us over on YouTube. Today's episode is brought to you by Bedonline. Bedonline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. Bedonline, where the game starts. So I think what was somewhat of a surprise move yesterday, Nazem Kadri signed with the Calgary Flames. And of course, we've been waiting for most of the summer to find out where Nazem Kadri would end up. All indications were that Lou Lamoriello had some secret behind the scenes deal. Apparently not the case, or not good enough, whatever it was. And Kadri decided to head to Calgary. He signed a 7-year deal for a $7 million cap hit per season. It's a real doozy of a contract, considering that he's going to be turning 32 this fall. So it'll take him through age 38, which I think if you're Calgary and you're sort of thinking about a short-term window, that's not going to matter much in the long run.
No, and you may figure by years 5, 6, and 7 of this contract that Kadri may be a candidate for the LTIR or for stashing him in the AHL if the cap situation really gets bad. But that's getting way ahead of ourselves, and hopefully it does not come to that. But for the short term, they certainly got themselves a very good hockey player, the player who is probably ranked second among forwards as far as available unrestricted free agents is concerned, and someone who will give them a little juice offensively as they head into this season. A lot of change in Calgary this year, that's for sure.
Yeah, and I do think you have to give Brad Treliving in Calgary some real credit here, because Johnny Gaudreau obviously left and signed in Columbus, and then Matthew Tkachuk basically demanded a trade because he said he wasn't going to re-sign with the team. They made a pretty good deal with Florida for that deal, and he got Jonathan Huberdeau, Mackenzie Weegar from the Panthers as part of that deal, managed to re-sign Jonathan Huberdeau or extend him, which was, a big part of what had to get done in order to make the deal worth it in the long run. And, now getting Nazem Kadri, when Johnny Gaudreau is the number 1 free agent, you get the number 2 free agent in return. That is some good GMing.
Yeah, it is. And I like the way they were sort of able to make maneuvers. They lost, 2 100-point scorers in one off season, and a lot of teams would be completely decimated by that. He goes out and finds a way to improve the team and get them back some quality offensive players. Got to give credit where credit is due.
Yeah, I think so too. And, another thing he was able to do is avoid arbitration with Andrew Mangiapane, who's like a big part of their offense this past season. They have a tremendous goaltender locked up in Jacob Markstrom. So they're pretty solid there. And I think that this is a time for them to really continue to go for it the way they have, like this past season. And I think really the weak spot on this Calgary team right now is their defense. I think that that's kind of the one thing they have to worry about. They currently, though, don't have a single defenseman with a cap hit over 5 million, which is crazy to think about.
That is, it's not easy to do that in the modern league, but maybe that is a reflection of the lack of proven talent, at least at that position right now.
Yeah, I absolutely think so. And so I think that all things being equal, Brad Living, if it turns out well for him, he could end up with a GM of the Year award.
Yeah, if it works out, it would be a heck of a lot of moves, and you got to give him credit. You really got to give him credit for dealing with what had to be a very difficult situation and turning it around. Obviously, we have to see how this plays out on the ice once the season gets underway. But overall, a lot of impressive moves made under the circumstances.
Right. And we do have to talk about the effect now on the New York Islanders because, with them being the presumed home for Nazem Kadri.
Yeah, a lot of Islander fans and a lot of Islander experts were looking at that possibility and sort of almost banking on it, as you had mentioned earlier uh, on the show, that everyone thought Lou had some secret deal, that the contract was signed and they were just waiting to make a few trades to clear up some cap space. So I guess from an Islanders perspective, I'm pleased they didn't get Kadri only because he's a center, and that is not really where their needs are. They would have to have moved somebody else, or either change their position or trade one of their centers away. But where do you get the scoring wing that this team still needs? There aren't quite as many high quality goal scorers out there in free agency. Probably have to go the trade route right now.
Yeah, I just don't see where there are many options for the Islanders out there, especially considering they kind of waited everything out during the bulk of free agency and when a lot of those trades were happening around the draft.
Yeah, and the only move they made at the draft was trading this year's first round pick for Alexander Romanov. They needed the puck moving defenseman. That made a certain amount of sense, and he's 22, 21. He's young. He still has the potential to get better. But as far as the goal scorer is concerned, the one thing that I'm concerned about, I don't think the Islanders can afford to wait until the trade deadline or later on in the off season, because there's not that much off season left, before making a move. They were 22nd in the league in goals scored this year, and that was with some players having career years. I really think they need to add somebody on the wing who could put the puck in the net. And if they don't do it, this team is treading water, and the teams around them are getting better.
Yeah, it's just a tough spot, and the Metro is so tough right now. And I think, obviously, other than the Flyers, I think everybody could be competitive depending on how things go. So we'll be curious to see what Lou Lamoriello chooses to do. As far as the Flames go, they were able to make the cap space to sign Kadri by trading Sean Monhahan to the Montreal Canadiens. And they had to pay the Canadiens a 2025 conditional first round pick, and the exchanges for basically nothing. It's future considerations, but that was the price that uh, Calgary had to pay in order to make that cap space. Sean Monhahan, it's just a rough situation, and I think that first round pick is going to be worth it for Montreal in the end. Absolutely, and we're going to talk about those crazy conditions in the next segment. But he's been really injured, been a healthy scratch, and he just hasn't really gotten a lot of ice time. So I think that Montreal may end up having to put him on IR.
Yeah, and I guess the advantage to that, if you put him on IR or LTIR, you could save that cap space as well. But yeah, it's not an easy situation, and certainly, Monahan only statistically the last 2 years a shadow of what he once was. Three-time, 30-goal scorer, and nowhere close to that last year.
Well, he's got a 6.375 cap hit for this one more year. So after that, they can get him off the books. So all in all, a cap hit like that for a first round pick, I think that's a good deal for Montreal. We're going to talk again about those conditions in the next segment, and we're going to talk about why the Habs think they had that cap space, and that has to do with Carey Price coming up next. But first, we're going to hear about our friends at BetOnline.
BetOnline.net is the fastest and easiest way to check in on all your betting needs. Find all your favorite sports and events at the #1 online source for odds, lines, and games. Find reviews and news of every league, including Major League Baseball, the NFL, NBA, the NHL, of course, combat sports, esports, and even golf. BetOnline continues to be the top online resource for all your sports wagering information, from live in-game betting, scores, and podcasts. They have you covered. Head to BetOnline today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action. BetOnline, where the game starts.
Gil, the conditions of that 2025 first round pick were exceedingly confusing, a maze. It's the longest conditions I think I've seen in a while, but I think I sort of have a handle on it.
All right, let's hear this.
So, and it makes a lot of sense in the grand scheme of things, because right now Calgary has 2 first round picks that year. They have their own, and they have the one they got from Florida in that deal that had Kachuk and Huberdeau and all of that.
Right.
So they have 2 picks. And so this is mostly to determine which pick Montreal is going to get. And that pick, though, that Florida pick is lottery protected. So there's a lot of different scenarios. Now, Calgary has offered up a scenario where they can have the 2024 first round pick if Calgary's own pick is between 20 and 32. They can just say, forget that mess in 2025. We'll take your first round pick now, and everything's done. But if Montreal chooses not to do that, then there's the 2 different scenarios. So assuming Calgary gets that Florida pick, that it is not top 10 for Florida, then Montreal gets the better of the 2 picks. If Calgary's pick is top 10 and Florida's pick is not top 10, Montreal gets Florida's pick.
Okay.
You got it so far?
I think so. Yeah.
All right. And then if for some reason Florida's pick winds up being a top 10 pick, so Calgary doesn't get that first round pick, and Calgary, then their lone first round pick, their own pick, is not top 10, Montreal gets Calgary's pick. And if Florida's pick is not top 10, because even though it's not in Calgary's hands, it's going to be taken into consideration because it's currently on the table as an option, right?
Yeah.
So if Florida's pick is not top 10 and is a better pick than Calgary's, Montreal will also get as a bonus a 4th round pick in 2024, just because they didn't get the better of the 2 picks in that scenario, right?
Okay.
And then, so again, Calgary doesn't get Florida's pick, so they only have their own pick, right? But their own pick is top 10. Then Montreal gets Calgary's first round pick.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
But if Calgary, for some reason, gets the #1 overall pick, Calgary wants to keep that pick, right? So they'll bump the pick to 2026, and Montreal will get an extra 3rd round pick as a bonus.
Got it. You know
So
how
it
long
all makes sense if you think about it.
it
But
does make sense. I'm just trying to figure out how long it took the general managers and their assistants and the lawyers involved and the capologists involved to work all of this out, because it couldn't have been 10 minutes, that's for sure.
no, and I think that, Montreal wanted to ensure that they were getting the better pick in any scenario, and
Right.
that's how you do it, but Calgary also wanted to protect themselves in case they got the first overall pick, right?
Yeah, exactly. So wow. Wow, wow,
Yeah,
wow.
so again, I think that's some really complex work there, but I think it all makes sense, and, well, I'll see you in 2025 to see what happens, I guess.
Well, we certainly have a lot to think about between now and then. Let's put it that way.
We do. Switching over to the cap space and why Montreal thought they could take on the Monahan contract is that we did hear from Kent Hughes that Carey Price's knee is still injured and that it's very unlikely he'll be able to play this season because he would need surgery and extensive rehab in order to do so. And that could, depending on if he decides to get surgery or not, determine what will happen with the rest of his career.
Yeah, I certainly feel for Carey Price and all he's been through. It has not been an easy couple of years for him, and with the injuries and the off-field issues that he's been going through. Hopefully he figures out, what he wants to do with his future. And I mean, I would love to see him play again, but obviously we have to see whether or not that's possible.
Yeah, and they're not going to comment on it further right now. Obviously, there's more to be determined. And if there's a statement to be made on Carey Price's career, they obviously want to make it separate from this trade, right?
Yeah.
Because Carey Price is worthy of special consideration in all of this. But it's so heartbreaking to see just because you really kind of wanted him to go out on his own terms. He has
Yeah.
been such a mainstay and such a dynamic goaltender in this league. And, he's certainly a role model to other goaltenders who are up and coming. I know Carter Hart especially really loves Carey Price and everything that Price has accomplished in the league. And so for him to be just out of the game seems unfathomable in a lot of ways.
It is, and he has been so good for so long, and unfortunately, a lot of players, most players, don't get to go out on their own terms. You know that a few years down the line in Montreal, there's going to be Carey Price night.
Oh, of
And
course.
there'll be and nobody does tributes like the Canadiens to honor their history and their past players. Do you think if his career is over now, Carey Price is a Hockey Hall of Famer?
Oof, you have to say yes, right?
I would think.
I mean, how many times has he won the Vezina? At least 5, if not more.
Yeah, he certainly has earned. Uh, I mean, the accolades are there, the numbers are there. Obviously, did not win a Stanley Cup, but he's got a Vezina, a Hart Trophy, a Jennings Trophy. I led the league in wins twice, led the league
Yeah.
in save percentage and goals against average once. Uh, I would have to say I would think he should be in, but again, uh, just disappointing to see if this is indeed the end of the line for him that he would go out this way.
Yeah, and I should have said he didn't get all those Vezinas, but he was in the top finalists
Right.
for
Right.
several Vezina years. So I think that he's just had such an impact on the league, and I certainly hope that he does what's best for him and makes his own decisions. So uh, hopefully we'll have some good news from him. But again, if not, stick taps to Carey Price as
Absolutely.
well. We do have more to talk about coming up next. We've got a new location for the draft and the NHL awards, plus World Juniors are wrapping up. So we're going to talk about all of that next. All right, Gil. So I'm excited about the announcement that Nashville will be hosting the NHL awards and the draft next year. And I think both of those events have a bit of a party atmosphere. And I think Nashville is the perfect place for it.
Yeah, I mean, Nashville, the music, the atmosphere, it would be of all the places you could hold a draft and have that big party. Yeah, Nashville up there. The awards also very celebratory kind of a thing, and I think Nashville will do a very good job of putting together, an event that the league and the fans can be proud of.
Yeah, I think so too. I did go to the AllStar Game that was held there. I didn't attend the game. I attended the skills competition, but was in Nashville for the whole stretch of time. And that was the whole John Scott situation
Uh-huh.
with the All-Star voting, which we talked about a couple of weeks ago when we talked about the tenure of Gary Bettman. But that was so wild, that whole thing. And I think it being in Nashville made it such a great atmosphere. There was some amazing booing of Patrick Kane at that event as well. And Nashville fans are just a real trip. And I always love being in that arena. It's so much fun. They do know how to put on a show. And I'm sure they'll have a ton of great musical guests as part of everything. So I'm excited and hopefully, maybe fingers crossed, get to go to that one.
I hope you can, and it'll be a fun time, no question about that.
It will. All right, World Juniors. We are up to the semifinals today, and we have Canada playing Czechia in the first of the two games. And man, Czechia upset Team USA 4-2 in the quarterfinals, and they just played Team USA uh, tooth and nail the entire time and absolutely deserved that win. So I'm excited to see how they match up against Canada in the medal round. So far, Mason McTavish of Team Canada is leading scoring in the tournament with 14 points, 7 goals, 7 assists. They won their quarterfinal 5-3 versus Switzerland, who really hung in there, I
They did.
think, unexpectedly. And I think Canada felt a little shaky after that game, and they know what they're up against with Czechia, again, who just upset Team USA. So it's going to be a much more difficult game for them. Gil, who do you think will come out of this one victorious?
I think Canada has to be the favorite. They are on paper the better team, but it's not going to be easy. Do not underestimate Czechia. I think this will be closer than anybody thought before this tournament started.
I think so too, but I think you're right. I just think Canada has a lot more depth at their disposal, and looking forward to seeing what Flyers prospect Tyson Forster can do in the semifinals and the medal games. He had the first goal in their quarterfinal game. Speaking of Flyers prospects, in our other semifinal, we have Sweden versus Finland, which is always a good time in games between these two countries. And the Flyers have a prospect, Emil Andrea, who has been playing extremely well for Team Sweden. And Gil, your Islanders have a prospect, Atu Ratu, who has been playing really well for Team Finland.
Yeah, he has really been on fire and leading Finland and just picking up bushels worth of points. And, I'm just looking forward to seeing how this experience improves him as a prospect. He came over to North America at the very end of the AHL season, played the last 2 games, played in the playoffs. This is just another step in his development, and I'm really happy to see him playing well.
Yeah, Ratu is number 4 in scoring overall in the tournament as of now, 3 goals, 6 assists. Andrea is the top defenseman in scoring in the tournament, right underneath at the 5 spot, 4 goals, 4 assists. So, both of them, again, having really solid tournaments. So that's good to see for our pipelines. Joachim Kemmel, who was drafted in this year's draft, is also having a great tournament for Finland. Always like watching him play. And again, Sweden versus Finland is a death match. And so very much looking forward to this game.
It's a great rivalry, and it's a little friendly and it's a little not friendly. It's one of those great hockey rivalries on the international stage, and I'm looking forward to seeing that one play out.
Exactly. I'm afraid to make a pick in this one. I will admit to being chicken on that front.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Finland because I think they're just sort of the hot hand right now, but it is going to be tough.
It really is. So once again, the semifinals are today. The medal games are on Saturday. Looking forward to all of that. That will do it for today's show. Thanks so much for listening. Gil, of course, will be back on Monday with his show checking in on NHL teams with hosts from around the league. We'll both be back next Friday. We'll recap the week that was and talk about topics around the NHL. I'm Rachel. I'm on Twitter at rmiriam. Gil is on Twitter at IceWars, NYRVSNYI. Have a great weekend, everybody.